This is the Olympus 50-200 f2.8 to 3.5. It is a stellar performer for the older 4 thirds DSLR cameras. However, how does this old lens perform on newer mirrorless micro four thirds camera bodies like the OM system or M1? That's exactly what I want to talk about in this video. Let's do this! Fun fact, I've actually owned this lens before when I was shooting with 4 thirds DSLR system. The lens was a great performer, it delivered fantastic results. When I migrated to micro four thirds system, I never used this lens on my camera bodies because the autofocus performance on the earlier days of micro four thirds, when you use these older 4 thirds DSLR lenses, they were really bad. But my interest in the 50-200 lens resurfaced since last year when OM system released their 50-200 f2.8 PRO lens. I've made a mini review for that lens. I'll put the link to the video up here. Please check it out. Therefore, I'm taking a look at this older Olympus 50-200 and I thought, why not test it on newer mirrorless micro four thirds camera bodies like this OM system or M1. After all, the autofocus performance, they have improved dramatically ever since. I brought this combination, the Olympus 50-200 old lens mounted on my OM system OM1 camera, and I was shooting some tennis action. Let's take a look at some sample photographs first. Considering the fact that this Olympus 50-200 is an old lens, obviously I'm not going to do a full review here. I just want to share some of my thoughts. While this is not a small or light lens, it is very fascinating to notice that this old Olympus 50-200 lens is slightly smaller and slightly lighter than the new OM system 50-200 f2.8 PRO. I understand the newer lens, the 50-200 OM system, has superior optics, it has constant aperture f2.8, it has built-in image stabilization, it can take teleconverter, it has internal zoom, all that good stuff, so you can't really make that lens too small, right? But I still find it really interesting to see that this old lens, this 4 thirds DSLR lens, is actually smaller and lighter, and in fact this combination, the old 50-200 on this OM1, I find it to work really well. The handling is very good. I have no problem shooting with this combination during the tennis games for several hours, no issue whatsoever. When it comes to optical performance, it is exactly as I've remembered from the older days. This old Olympus 50-200, it performed really well. In terms of sharpness, it is really incredible. You have high level of sharpness. The lens manages to resolve plenty of fine details, really good contrast. There's nothing much to complain about when it comes to image quality. In fact, I'll say that the image quality, it can hold its own against newer micro four thirds pro level lenses today. Let's talk about the autofocus performance, which I think is the most important thing I want to talk about in this video. When I'm using this old Olympus 50-200 on the newer OM system OM1 micro Four Thirds camera body, I expected the autofocus performance to do quite well. Why not? There is the new face detection autofocus with don't know how many hundreds of thousands of points spread across the image sensor, and then the new human face and eye tracking autofocus algorithm. With this combination, I thought they would improve the autofocus performance on this combination. But I was sadly wrong. The autofocus performance of this combo is quite disappointing. I get about less than 50% hit rate. And that is actually quite bad. More than half of my shots I've taken with this combination were either slightly out of focus or completely out of focus. It doesn't really matter. If I can't get tack sharp images, it means that the autofocus system has failed. Full technical disclosure, I was using continuous autofocus with a human face and eye tracking activated. And yeah, fact is fact, I get less than half of my shots being out of focus. But hey, I think it's a stretch too far to expect OM system to optimize their autofocus performance for an older lens like this 50-200 from a dinosaur DSLR days. I understand this is an old lens, but hey, one can only hope. There are some important notes that I must mention when I'm using this old Olympus 50-200 on the newer OM system OM1 camera body. Number one, you cannot mount this lens directly on the micro Four Thirds camera. You need an adapter. There are several original ones released by Olympus or OM system, but you can find a third-party one. It works just as well. Number two, the burst rate or the sequential shooting frames per second will be reduced. You won't be able to shoot like 20 frames per second or 50 frames per second. I think you get about 10 frames per second or less when you're shooting with this older Four Thirds lens. And I think that also impacted on the hit rate, because when you have higher frame rate or higher burst rate, you do get higher chance of nailing the shot. But because the burst rate is much lower in combination with the poor autofocus performance, your chances of nailing the shot is also compromised. Number three, yes, this older lens, the Olympus 50-200, is made to be weather sealed, but because it's such an old lens, it's been around for so long, I'm sure the weather sealing is compromised, and I do not recommend using this lens in any harsh weather conditions. And finally, number four, yes, I mentioned that the image quality is excellent, it's super sharp, it has really good contrast, but there is also some traces of chromatic aberration. It is not serious, it can be easily corrected in post. I'm sure this question will come. Hey Robin, how does this old Olympus 50-200 compare to the new OM system 50-200 Pro lens? Obviously, the winner is the new OM system 50-200. You don't even need to do a side-by-side comparison. It is that obvious. In terms of optical construction, the new 50-200 Pro wins. Hands down, it's sharper, it renders better contrast, the bokeh quality is even better, and it has a lot of features that this older lens doesn't have. The new OM system 50-200 has built-in image stabilization, allowing you to use the 5-axis sync IS. You can take in teleconverter, extending the reach if necessary, and it has internal zoom. Everything about the new OM system 50-200 F2.8 Pro is better than this old Olympus 50-200 F2.8 through 3.5. However, that new lens, the 50-200 Pro, is asking for $3,700 US. I'm not sure if the price has come down a lot recently, but that's the launch price last year. And I got this old Olympus 50-200 F2.8 to 3.5 for about $250. Of course, This lens will not outperform the new lens, but it is also selling now, at least in the used market, for a fraction of the asking price for the new 50-200 Pro. So I thought, for the price I'm paying for, this is not a bad lens. So do I recommend you getting this old Olympus 50-200 to be used on your OM system OM1 or OM1 Mark II? Well, the answer is no. Unless you already have one lying around, you don't mind playing around with this lens, trying it on your cameras, or if you found one at such a good price, dirt cheap, you don't mind spending that money, right? Then it's okay. Just want to have some fun. I think the lens can still give you some really good results. However, if you really care about performance, if you want the lens to deliver great results, if you want autofocus to really work, then I suggest getting the newer lenses like the 40-150 F2.8 Pro or 50-200 F2.8 Pro, those native Pro Micro Four Thirds lenses to be used on your OM system Pro grade cameras. I hope you found my sharing beneficial. Hey, if you've enjoyed looking at my photographs, please consider buying me a cup of coffee, or you can contribute directly to my PayPal, or you can join as a member on this channel. Links in the description below on how you can do any of that. Any support goes a long way, will definitely help me to continue making more content. Until the next one, please go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.